something I did not do. Please file a murder with me. And then we get real personal. For real. What the f*** you waiting for?
I think I picked up the knife and I stabbed her.
Where did you stab her?
I think I stabbed her in the stomach. It was multiple times. Like, kind of like a joint effort. She was heavy. We just put it in. The water was turned on.
At some point in time, you did realize that morning your mom was dead.
Yeah.
These are identical twin sisters, Taz and Jazz. On January 13th, 2010, the twins hacked their mother to death, cleaned up, and then went to school like nothing had happened. They would later call the police and spin an intense web of lies they themselves made up. But when they were finally caught, they would give a chilling reason for murdering their mom.
This was an act of rage. It was the two girls had planned for this event.
But that's not the only chilling thing the police would find about this case. Let's explore the case of the twin teens who hacked their mom to death. At 17 years old, Nikki Whitehead got pregnant with twins. She named them Tazmaya and Jazzmaya Whitehead, also known as Taz and Jazz. The twins didn't live with their mom at first. They spent the first 13 years of their lives with their great-grandmother, Della Frazier. According to Della, Nikki was hardly in her daughters' lives. But Nikki's close friends said that Nikki always dreamt of giving her daughters a better life.
She definitely didn't want them to go in the same direction, that the path that she went down.
So when the girls were 13 years old, Nikki fought for custody and she and the twins moved about 20 miles away to Conyers, Georgia. Nikki made sure her girls lacked nothing, signing them up for music and dance classes so they could have every resource available to them. The girls were also dedicated to their studies and they got straight A's and had high hopes of attending Harvard one day.
She did their hair, their makeup, and it was just, for Nikki, when it came to her kids, it was always a celebration.
From the outside looking in, it looked like they were a happy family of three. But if you looked closer, the cracks began to show.
It was difficult for them to start hearing and accepting, the word no. As Nikki became more stern, that's just something that they couldn't get used to. You're 14, you can't talk to 17-year-old guys, and you can't be on the phone at a certain time, and you can't stay out or whatnot. That's when I think it became a battle.
This was not a battle. Nikki was winning. Her sweet little girls were slowly morphing into twin terrors right before her very eyes. The fights were becoming more constant now, and Nikki was getting scared. On one occasion, Nikki had gotten into it with the twins, and she was so scared that she called the police. Officer Myra Scruggs showed up, and what she witnessed was deeply concerning.
I talked with the girls at great length, trying to figure out what was going on.
From what Officer Scruggs could see, the girls had a good life, but they insisted they didn't want to live with their mom anymore. They wanted to move back in with their great-grandmother, where the rules were non-existent, but their mom stood in their way. After interviewing the girls and their mom, Officer Scruggs couldn't shake off this unsettling feeling that something was off.
The girls seem very innocent, very sweet. But the look in Nikki's face, she was fearful of those children. She knew that they worked together.
After talking the girls down, Officer Scruggs had this feeling that something bad was about to happen, and she wasn't wrong.
I just knew it wasn't over. And within, I would say, 3 or 4 minutes, I could hear screaming coming from the direction of the house. Both of them jumped on her, and the two of them began to beat her.
Nikki called 911 again, and Officer Scruggs rushed back to the house.
Nikki's running out of the house with the cordless phone in her hand, hysterical. I pulled up, asked her what happened. She said as soon as I left that the girls had attacked her.
But according to Taz and Jazz, it went down differently.
The twins said that once they went back in the house after we left, that their mother became abusive with them, told them that they were not going anywhere, and started to beat them.
But only one person had scratch marks all over them, and that was Nikki.
She had scratches on her neck, scratches on her chest, and she was hysterical. The girls, on the other hand, had no marks on them, no indication that really they had been in any kind of an altercation. Talking with them, I didn't believe a thing that the girls had said.
But what struck Officer Scruggs was their disturbingly calm behavior after the attack. Taz and Jazz were arrested and charged, but the court only ended up ordering both twins and their mom to go to counseling and then released them temporarily to their great-grandmother. On January 5th, 2010, Nikki Whitehead regained custody of the twins again. Despite several protests from Jazz and Taz, the court ordered them and their mother to live together for a 2-week trial period. That was a huge mistake. 8 days after the girls went to live with their mother, Nikki Whitehead would be found dead in her own home.
As I was pulling out to get to the gate, the young lady stopped me, saying someone had killed her mother.
Taz and Jazz told the police that they had gotten back from school to find their mother laying dead in the bathtub filled with her own blood. The police immediately went to work trying to figure out who could have committed such a horrific thing. How has a once happy home turned into a house of death?
You walked in and what happened?
To the kitchen, and I seen the blood in there on the floor. And I went in there and I seen her.
The police said Nikki had been savagely stabbed 80 times with a kitchen knife, to the point that her spinal cord was almost severed.
When I walked in the front door, it was the first time I'd ever been on something as horrific as that.
As the investigation commenced, the police wondered who could have wanted Nikki dead, and their first thought went to the twins' father. However, that was immediately ruled out as the father was living in Canada at the time of the murder. Then, the twins revealed to the police that their mom had 2 boyfriends. Could this have been a crime of passion?
She lived with Robert, and she also had a boyfriend named Joe. The twins had indicated that Robert had overheard her speaking to the other boyfriend on the phone, and indicated that Robert had confronted Nikki about the infidelity.
But as the investigation continued, police started noticing that was off with the girls.
Saw her bite her arm. We stopped her and asked her, hey, what are you doing? And she explained that she does that when she gets upset.
As they took the twins to the interrogation room, they appeared visibly distraught.
Oh, my grandma. My mama.
The twins then narrated the horrendous scene they walked into when they got back from school.
You walked in and what happened?
To the kitchen, I put myself down, and I seen the blood all in there on the floor. And I went in there and I seen her and I touched her.
As the interview progressed, the twins made a comment that caused the detective to pause.
And when I said, what can I do to make this easier for you? They turned and looked at me and they said, can we watch CSI? And immediately the hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. Essentially, it was right then and it was like, okay, something was very, very off.
And that was not all. The twins seemed to have no empathy for their dead mother.
They would cry a lot, but it was tearless crying. When I would ask them to describe their mother, they were very insulting of their mother.
Things were beginning to stick out, and there was something else. The twins had worn gloves throughout the interview.
I need to see your hands and your arms. What happened here?
I got into a fight.
While the police searched through the house, they found more things that were not adding up.
The sinks were completely clean and wiped. We found shoes in their back of their closet that had blood on it.
As they looked through Taz's room, the puzzle began to come together.
I noticed there's a pair of brown boots that have a significant amount of blood on them, and they're in a shoebox.
But that's not all.
I found a clump of hair, which normally a clump of hair is insignificant in a female's house simply because there's hair everywhere. But when that clump of hair has been pulled out of somebody's head and then has been wrapped in a napkin and stuffed into the toe of a shoe, you begin to realize that the twins were not telling us anything that was truthful.
That's awful. Suddenly, the detectives knew the killers had been right under their noses this entire time. The twins, knowing they're being watched, gave a performance worthy of an Oscar.
I'm never gonna be happy now. Because somebody was selfish and took my mom away from me.
But soon enough, their lies began to unravel.
What time did y'all leave the house this morning?
We missed the bus, so we had to walk.
You walked all the way to Rockdale?
It's not far.
Upon further investigation, the police would find out from a surveillance video at a nearby gas station the twins didn't walk to school that day. They hitched a ride from a stranger.
We began catching them in lies concerning their time frames or their details. They began to be very angry and would become argumentative and very uncooperative.
And according to the high school surveillance video, the twins arrived at school way later than they told the police.
We were able to determine that they arrived there at mid-morning, where they told us they were only about 10 minutes late for school.
But without enough evidence, the police released the twins to the custody of their great-grandma. At first, it seems like Taz and Jazz had won. Their mom was dead and they got to live with their great-grandma. As the police quietly built their case and waited for the test results, the girls went back to living their lives. And then the police found something interesting. It seemed like Nikki Whitehouse had left one clue behind to help them nail her killers.
To Nikki's credit, she did not go down without a fight, and she left evidence on one of her girls as a marker.
The police immediately were taken back to Taz biting her arm, and it looked like she was trying to cover up Nikki's bite mark.
We had a dental examination of Nikki's teeth, and they matched it to the bite on the twin.
The detectives would catch more breaks in the case as an autopsy result re-evaluated the human hair between Nikki's teeth.
They found human hair between Nikki's teeth. We would surmise that twin was behind Nikki and had her from around the front. Nikki's fighting for her life and bit her arm, and that's how the hair became embedded in her teeth.
The police were beginning to unravel the twins' web of lies. And soon enough, on May 21st, 2010, Taz and Jazz were arrested.
We decided we were going to arrest them on the last day of school for fear of they were going to take flight out of the country to avoid the charges.
And at that point, their true colors began to show.
I'm not going down for something I did not do. Please sign a murder weapon, and then get the real person. For real. What the f*** waiting for?
You know, I don't believe anything they say. Everything they said, whether it had some truth or fiction in it, had their self-interest at heart.
But after nearly 4 years awaiting trial, the twins finally came forward with a chilling confession.
I think I picked up a knife and I stabbed her.
Where did you stab her?
I think I stabbed her in the stomach. It was multiple times. Like, kind of like a joint aircraft. She was heavy. We just put it in. The water was turned on.
At some point in time, you did realize that morning your mom was dead.
Yeah.
Taz and Jazz took a plea deal to avoid trial. They pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and were both sentenced to 30 years in prison. But the scary question is, what actually happened on that horrible day?
They didn't want to get up when they were awakened to go to school for by their mother. And I think that's what sparked the attack, the confrontation, and that they killed their mother.
Then, Taz and Jazz cleaned up the mess they had made and headed to school so that they would have an alibi. But that's not all. While they were searching through their home, detectives found a journal. In it, a plan to murder their mother.
And they would write back and forth to each other how much they disliked their mother, and even to the point that they said in their writings that if they didn't get rid of her soon, they weren't going to be able to.
And there was more. The detectives had discovered that at some point during the attack, Nikki had escaped to the neighbor's house.
When we interviewed that resident, he recalled someone yelling, and he heard someone ring his doorbell. He was in bed at the time, and he didn't get up to go investigate.
But the girls dragged her back to the house to finish her off.
And we could see where Nikki's bare feet exited and re-entered through that door in blood. So we would surmise that she was pulled back into the house where the attack resumed.
The twins smashed their mother over the head with a pot, hacked her with a kitchen knife, choked her with a metal ribbon, and dragged her body into the tub where they watched her die.
What does she say when she's in the tub?
Kill me now and I'll kill y'all.
But what happened then?
She just, she went under a couple times and that was it.
I'm sure that their confession was self-interested. They were looking out for themselves and had been coached by attorneys, and they said enough to live up to their part of the plea.
Taz and Jazz will be in prison until they're in their 40s. They might look like innocent teenagers, but underneath those calm exteriors are cold-blooded killers who hacked their mother to death. Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you know of other similar cases? Let me know in a comment, and before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time, and stay safe.